Well, greetings, everyone. My name is Greg Coleridge. I'm one of the co-directors at Move to Amend, and welcome to this panel presentation of information and analysis, followed by comments and discussion from you on the impact of the midterm elections for Move to Amend, the implications for the larger democracy movement, and how we might shift the narrative and strategies on working for real democracy in, well, everything, not just elections. With the elections now being over, it's fair to ask a few questions. What happened? What changed? Did it change? The political system now authentically legitimate based on the results. That is our political system one of an informed electorate that chooses representatives who deliberate and decide in the interests of their constituents as a whole? Finally, what hasn't changed? What remains or is about the same in terms of individuals having the power to make decisions affecting their lives and communities and ensuring a livable world? Therefore, what is our path forward individually as Move to Amend and in working with others in building a larger democracy movement? So our panel is going to be answering and reflecting on some of those questions. You may have some responses and input and reflections as well. Before we begin and before I introduce the panel, just a word of background for some of you who may not be familiar to Amend. Move to Amend is a coalition of hundreds of organizations and hundreds of thousands of individuals committed to social and economic justice, ending corporate rule, and building a vibrant democracy that is genuinely accountable to people and not corporate interests. We have a number of principles and values that we have dedicated ourselves to and have done so for the 12 years and counting that we've been around, including anti-oppression and solidarity organizing, coalition movement building, grassroots organizing, dedication to political education, and trying to maintain both our political and economic independence. We have two goals, and they're interconnected. The first is to pass what we call amendment. It's a resolution before Congress, HCR 48. It's a constitutional amendment that would ensure that a corporation is not a person with constitutional rights and that money is not speech. And the second goal is to provoke discussion and organizing about how to make real the promise of American democracy through constitutional renewal. Our strategy, and we'll get into the program here in a moment, is the following, a couple of them. Coalition building, which means reaching out to other organizations, working on building really corporate democratic power to take on corporate power. Second is building a diverse, multiracial, and intergenerational movement, which in particular means to those individuals and those constituencies that have historically and currently been most affected by corporate rule. Third, we're dedicated to political and community organizing and not just activism. And finally, we focus on organizing to pass things like local and state resolutions calling for our We the People Amendment. So as we begin, just a few logistics. First, please mute yourself right now if you haven't already done so. Second, each panelist, the program is each panelist will have about 5 to 7 minutes for reflections. Daniel, we're going to give you a few minutes more if you care to, since we know, unfortunately, you have to leave, but thanks so much for being here with us to the degree and for the time you can. After the presentations, Alfonso Saldana, who is co-director to Move to Amend, has some information and announcements he wants to share with you. And then we're going to get into questions, comments, and reflections from you that you can do either in chat or verbally. Feel free to use the chat, or if you like to be recognized, do so at the bottom of the screen under reactions. If you just click on that, if you Zoom, you can see a little icon and the word raise hand. That's what you would click on. Once recognized, please unmute yourself and then make your offering on point, and if possible, as brief as possible. Spanos and Dolores Guernica will monitor the chat, and Alfonso will be doing the same on Facebook. So with all of that being said, by background, brief introduction to our panel. Daniel Lee is a Move to Amend National Leadership Team member, so board of directors. He's also the mayor currently of Culver City, California, a project manager of the James Lawson Institute that works on educating and organizing on nonviolent social change. He's also a past active member of Occupy Los Angeles and InterOccupy, and has been involved in a number of community organizing efforts. George Friday is also Move to Amend National Leadership Team member, also on our staff, and is founders. George is a United for Peace and Justice national organizer, as well as on staff of Carolina Peace Action. They work with many grassroots community and national organizations providing leadership development and skill training with a particular focus on communication, oppression, change, and the role of privilege in transforming power dynamics, fostering broad, deep economic and social justice change. And lastly, Lawrence Abbott. He's a retired International Brotherhood of Teamsters member, a labor political organizer, a wildlife biologist, an arborist, a Teamsters delegate, all those go in hand, of course, an officer for the Alameda Labor Council, FLCO. He's also one of the coordinators of East Bay, California, Move to Amend, our affiliate in that part of the world. Also a campaign field coordinator of the 2022 Labor candidate for the California State General Assembly, who was Liz Ortega. So he's got some battle election bruises, no doubt, to share. So with that, we will go in that order, beginning with Daniel, then George, then Lawrence. Daniel, welcome.
Thanks, Greg. And I'll try not to take too much time because I know people's questions are important. Sorry, I won't be able to be here to answer any, but I wanted to start first talking about my city, because I know, of course, the We the People Amendment is focused on Congress, but Pledge to Amend, of course, is focused on getting Congress members, senators, state reps, and local reps to sign on in support of HJR 48. The reason I wanted to start with my city, even though I'm not running for re-election, is that the first time I ran for city council, I raised $12,000. I lost by about 134 votes. The second time, I raised $29,000 and won by about 350 votes. In this race, in which I'm not participating, for the first time, a billionaire stepped into the race. Our city is basically about 38,000 people, 38 to 40,000 people. We're surrounded by Los Angeles on every side. So it's a small town in middle of the second largest city in the country. But recently, companies like Amazon Studios, Apple Studios, TikTok's North American headquarters, Cash App, and other large companies have moved into the city. They haven't gotten into politics at all until this year, when the person who owns the land that Amazon Studios is on now put $500,000 into the race to support two candidates who would do things that he did not like that we did. And, you know, we've done things like past rent control. We're one of the few cities in the country moving forward with reparations. And we installed a protected bus and bike lane that connects us to the Culver City Metro Station, which connects us to the rest of Los Angeles. That in particular, he does not like. But there are other issues. We raise the business tax mostly on large corporations so that we can get more money, and lowered the tax on small businesses. And as a result, it seems like he was successfully able to buy one seat on our council. It looked like it might be two, but it's seeming like people power saved us one. But I wanted to start with that to talk about how deep this goes. We all often talk about Congress. and we often talk about, what we can do locally, but what we can do locally is being limited more and more as more billionaires and wealthy people get into local races. And because of Citizens United and Buckley versus Vallejo in particular, we can't set a limit on independent expenditures, and we can't set a limit on what wealthy people can spend on their own campaigns. I also ran for Congress earlier this year. I came in third in my primary. The person who came in ahead of me raised $400,000 more than me, and it ended up spending about $20 a vote. I spent about $3 a vote. And, we lost by 0.6%, which was not fun. But what was instructive in this race is, even though I raised possibly like the fifth most amount of money in a field of 7 candidates, during the primary, for the first time, and this happened across the country, the Democratic Majority for Israel and AIPAC spent $238,000 against me in attack ads in that race. Even though I did not have near the name recognition of the first 2 candidates, even though we did not talk about foreign policy. And if we did, I've never said or uttered anything anti-Semitic, though I am unabashedly pro-Palestine. I say that to only talk about what happened everywhere else. In Ohio, I believe Donna Edwards, who used to be a Congress member, was running for Congress again. The same people, AIPAC and DMFI, spent $2 million against her, actually $20 million against her. They did the same thing with Nina Turner. Nina Turner was a larger group of people. They really don't like her because a lot of us really do like her. And then, the positive case, Summer Lee, and I believe it was Pennsylvania. I might have the state wrong. Forgive me, Northeasterners. They spent a very large amount of money against her, but with the support of progressive organizations and people on the ground, she actually won. She was a light. Her and Maxwell Frost, I think, are the most, in Florida, are the most real positive examples that I see in this election. And I also believe that they're the people who are most likely to really support Move to Amend and to see the importance of constitutional reform, getting corporate power out of our government and getting money out of politics. I think if you look at everything together, it seems like, and of course, people who are real Democratic Party insiders will frame this as a win because the Democrats keep control of the Senate, possibly with one more seat. And, the House is more or less a toss-up, basically looking like the Republicans win. More and more, we don't have as many sympathetic voices in the Republican Party, frankly, for the People Amendment. So looking at the Democrats specifically is important. Looking at independents, if we had more in Congress, would be important. But I think we're at this point where there's a greater acknowledgement of the need for the work that we're doing. But there is this same election year phrasing or narrative to try to say it's just about the election year. It's just about this. It's just about that. And I think it's really instructive. And this wasn't related to the election per se, but it was really instructive that former President Trump announced that he's running for re-election yesterday. I think that says a lot about the state of our democracy and a lot about the state of corporate power and money in politics. This is a man who was impeached twice, who basically tried to have a coup, who nevertheless has enough money to gloss over it, who has the corporate power to make people believe something different. That is scary. I think we're at a good place as Move to Amend because the level of education around the stakes is higher, but the level of actions with people who say they are our supporters or our co-sponsors needs to be elevated. Things are getting worse and darker day to day, and our response isn't large enough to push back the very open fascism that isn't just coming, but is here. We don't necessarily need to do more as an organization, I believe, but we need to think about other strategies and tactics to make the education that's already out there deeper, and to make the people who are educated about the stakes and the weight of the crisis believe that they can actually do something about it. Because I think there are a lot of people compared to 10 years ago who really believe what we're talking about, who might even go farther. What they don't always believe is that we can change it. And I think that's really our task here on the board and the national team and the affiliates and for supporters around the country.
Thank you, Daniel. Well stated, especially the last one. Hello, George. Greetings. Welcome.
Greetings. Thank you. I'm really glad to be here. I wish things were better. We can't celebrate wins in a big way because maybe some of you can if you're in parts of the country besides the South, which is red, red, red. And in North Carolina, the Supreme Court is now predominantly Republican, as is our Court of Appeals. And if you know what Court of Appeals deals with in terms of criminal justice and Black and brown communities, that is not good at all. There's also a supermajority in the North Carolina House, so that the Democratic governor now has no veto power. So we're going to have a lot of fun in North Carolina. So our work, and Daniel really said it best in many ways, we're at a point where people can buy an office, buy a seat on the city council or the school board, or a seat in the Senate or the House. There may be a record amount of money spent on the midterms. Open Secrets a few days before the election said that it was likely that over $17 billion would have been spent on the midterms. If that is not the definition of obscenity, I don't know what is. And part of the issue, as Daniel said, he doesn't see that we at Move to Amend need to do a lot different. But I think that we, those of us who are in communities in our local areas, have to do the work to make it clear that we are not going to tolerate elections that cost this much. I don't know how we make that clear. It's not boycotting giving money to candidates because someone else will buy the elections locally, statewide, regionally, and nationally. But people will, people who want to take advantage, create an oligarchy and more fascism, will push for as much as we let them. And we are at the point now where we cannot tolerate it, and we have to be loud about it, and we have to be consistent about it, that if you want my vote, you better not take that money. And we have to figure out effective strategies to increase our numbers so that we're amplifying our voice louder than those who are using money to keep us silent. So what does that mean? It means that in towns like mine in Gastonia, North Carolina, which overwhelmingly elected Republican candidates, we have to talk to those folks and help them connect the dots between what's going on in their day-to-day reality and corporate rule. That as long as we allow money to control the power of decision-making in any part of our elected system, we, the people, will not be a priority. The needs of our communities, from schools to hospitals, to infrastructure, to dealing with climate crisis, none of those are going to get the kind of attention that we need to survive. I'm not talking about being just comfortable or just making sure corporations don't have too much power. I'm talking about the power to stop polluting in local communities, make sure that children are getting what they need, make sure that public safety is not just militarized police, but it's actual justice. And that's not what we're on the path for right now. We may, or in some of the parts of the country, people may have held on or held the ground in terms of some political power. But for the most part, it's slipping away from our hands, and we have to figure out how do we regain the kind of political power necessary to pass the We the People Amendment, to make sure that locally people have their needs met, and that we're not overrun by money. That's it for me for now. We'll have more time to talk later.
Yep, time for cussing and discussing coming up. So
Cussing and discussing.
you got it. And so coming forward now is Lawrence Abbott. Greetings, Lawrence.
Greetings. Thanks so much. It's really a pleasure to be here and an honor. And I see lots of close friends in the participant list. So thank you all for coming to support me here. I know you all know that I have a hard time being in front of a big group, so appreciate you even more. So for those of you that don't know me, my primary passion is wildlife biology, wildlife management, plants and animals, and trees, of course. And I became a teamster to raise my family because so many of my friends were struggling to raise a family as a biologist. And of course, that makes sense, right? Because our system really values corporate type folks, business type folks, and it's kind of hard to get some obscure frog like a red-legged frog or something to be able to support a family. So it's just the way that our system is rigged. And that's what I discovered, a long time ago, is that our system is rigged. And that's when I discovered Move to Amend as really the solution for it, because as long as we have value so much money and power, and as long as our system is rigged so that we the people don't have the power, then everything bad's going to happen to nature and wildlife. And everything bad has been happening as we're in the middle of an extinction event. We've already lost about 50% of our total bird biomass in North America since I was a kid. So really scary stuff going on. So anyway, when I retired in 2016, my labor council found out I was retired and asked me to work for them as a political organizer. So I learned how to help them run campaigns. And that was very interesting. But this year is the first year that our executive director decided to run for public office and run for the state assembly. And she asked me to work directly for a campaign. So I really got an education this year in how campaigns work and how expensive they are. Just for perspective, I found a little bit of data from Cal Matters, who has published this data. Since in this election, since September 1st in California, just the independent expenditures alone, the IEs, that's money that other, mostly corporations or also any big union can spend on behalf of a campaign, but not directly involved in their campaign. They've spent $40 million in this campaign in California. These campaigns up until September 1st, it's probably way over 50 million now. And if you look at the money that candidates collect, it's just about that same amount all over again. So, another 40, 50 million. So pretty darn close to $100 million in California for people that are mostly, saying they want to do things to improve people's conditions in California. And just think what 100 million could have done to improve people's conditions in California. So it's really, really tragic just looking at the money in politics alone, let alone the other part of what the We the People Amendment would do. And that would end corporate personhood, which would also diminish the power of corporations and greatly increase the power of we the people, so that we could do everything that needs to be done to protect biodiversity, to transition to renewable energy in time before too much damage is done. Because every minute that we're not transitioning, the more money it's going to cost to try to save us and save life on Earth. So just to give you an example, the three candidates that became important, probably the one that was the most important was the one that I helped work on. And by the way, we did win. We ended up with 60% of the vote. Not all the votes are counted, but our opponent had less than 40% of the vote, and we have over 60 now. And but he was supported by oil, gas, and pharmaceutical, medical, and the big electrical utilities. They spent just on their IEs alone, those they spent about $1 million in this campaign against our candidate. So she had to raise, close to another $1 million, which came out of the pocket of hardworking people, buses and nurses and firefighters, which they gladly did, but it's money they don't really have. And it's just tragic that it takes so much work, so many people working to try to prevent corporate takeovers of our government, even on a local level. The same thing with the mayor of Oakland's race. They spent over $1 million, and a state Senate candidate also spent over $1 million to defeat her. And then we had to spend, close to $1 million to try to win. That race is still neck and neck, but it looks like Aisha Wahab is winning also. It looks like the people's candidate in Oakland is probably losing, although she could still possibly pull it out. So not just looking at money in politics, but Move to Amend. I donate to Move to Amend because I know it's going to take power and people power to unrig our system and to really try to get democracy for the first time ever. And so I hope that you all will join me as a monthly donor. I'm a volunteer. I know everybody on this call is volunteers, doing all we can do to get this work done. But if we can either just kick in a little bit of cash or a little bit of time, that's what really makes the difference in winning and losing campaigns. And of course, we have a campaign, and that's to pass the We the People Amendment, House Joint Resolution 48. Pass.
Well, thanks, Lawrence. Appreciate your reflections and those of George Daniel. We are going to very shortly bring all of the rest of you up front collectively and provide you an opportunity both on Zoom, and I know Alfonso is during the chat in Facebook and maybe other social medias. But before doing that, wanted to bring Alfonso himself before us to share some information, some important information that sort of is kind of a bridge to what Lawrence suggested and was talking about. Greetings, Alfonso.
Thank you, Greg. And thank you everyone that is joining us here tonight and on Zoom, and everyone watching from Facebook, and to anyone that might be watching us in the future, watching this recording. Thanks to our panelists. And as you have heard, they all come from various backgrounds, but they all share in common a passion for social justice. And one of the things that I love most about Move to Amend is that we are really the only social justice organization that is working towards empowering about every other social justice fight. When you think about it, whatever it's your number one concern, whether it is climate change, getting Medicare for all passed, or the privatization of the educational system, the housing and wealth inequality, corruption, a Supreme Court that is super friendly with corporations, whatever your number one concern might be, if you stop and think about it, it will most likely boil down to corporations abusing their ill-gotten personhood rights, or due to big money being seen under current law as free speech, which enables overreach to get the way about every single time. There are many, many studies that have been done and that show that the ultra-rich on average have a greater say over the policymaking process than the average American. But this doesn't have to be the case. We believe that the passage of the We the People Amendment can be an important tool to dismantle corporate rule and strike up conversations about dismantling the larger system and the institutions that were founded upon the marginalization and oppression of people, as well as the exploitation of the earth and destruction of communities. So please, whatever might be your number one social concern, please make Move to Amend your second priority and join the thousands of real people that are sick and tired of the atrocious ill-conceived notion that corporations are people and that want to go beyond just reverting Citizens United and completely abolishing the notion that money is political free speech. We really make every dollar stretch to the max. We are a small staff organization doing amazing stuff with the help of an even more amazing nationwide coalition. This year alone, the We the People Amendment gained 94 co-sponsors and 179 candidates running for local, state, and federal elections took the pledge. We also gained 20 organizational endorsements. Like I said, we are a small and scrappy group of individuals trying to make a big difference, and we're getting results. So I please beg you, please help us continue doing this work and help us plan ahead. With the new Congress, there's a new opportunity to advance the We the People Amendment, and becoming a monthly sustainer is the best way to do so. Having a monthly income ensures that we have the staff and the resources necessary to keep pushing the We the People Amendment. So again, I ask you to please consider becoming a monthly donor to ensure that the work to pass the We the People Amendment continues uninterrupted. We take absolutely no donations or contributions from government grants or corporations, and we only get support from real people. We are entirely funded by people that are passionate about defending democracy and getting big money out, as well as the influence of big corporations out of politics. We truly cannot do this work without you. The average monthly donation is just $40, which is very low in comparison to the amount of results that we have been getting over the years, and in comparison to many other organizations. So please help us continue building a grassroots movement to legalize democracy. And also, we are very excited that tonight we're kickstarting our annual fundraising drive. In tradition to matching gift drives, Move to Amend has created a fundraising opportunity that is true to our grassroots ideals. Our goal is to crowdfund $60,000, and in December, those $60,000 will be presented to the public as a fund to be matched. This is the centerpiece to our end of the year fundraising appeal. This is the time of the year when we get about 80% of our donations, and this helps us plan ahead for the upcoming year. So please, if you have the means, please consider contributing towards this effort, and please consider making a contribution today that will make your gift go twice as far. I would also like you to sign up for a newsletter in case that you're not already receiving our emails. This is a good way to stay tuned about some other group opportunities that we're going to be having coming up very soon. So again, just go into our website and sign up for emails, and soon we'll be unveiling some other things that we're going to be doing this month and the next. Thank you.
Great. I thank you so much, Alfonso. And toward that goal of trying to attain $60,000 up front to form a match, we have a small family foundation that wishes to remain anonymous that has already jump-started this effort and is contributing $25,000. So we are not quite halfway there. So if you can help us go a little further, that'd be great. And that certainly does adhere to the principle, one of them that I mentioned early on, of being political, and they're inextricably connected. To be politically independent, you need to be economically independent.
Mhm.
because they go hand in hand. Otherwise, you are at the mercy of those who have levers and or strings, if not ropes, that sometimes form around our necks collectively. So it's important to be both politically and economically independent, and that's why we seek grassroots support. So toward that shameless self-promotion, thanks so much, Alfonso. And those of you, please again go to movetomen.org/donate. All right, so let's now pivot to questions, comments, reflections. If you wish to be acknowledged and wish to speak, please raise your hand. I will try to catch those. If you have already asked a question or wish to ask a question, make a comment, please contribute to that in the chat. So since we already have some pretty active, lively discussion and queries and entries in the chat, I'm going to ask either Jenny or Dolores to bring to the fore any salient questions or comments.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining. So the first question comes from Leslie Roberts. Does the 117th Senate have a copy of JR Res 48? If not, why? If yes, what is it and by whom?
Have a copy, or is that what the question was?
Essentially a Senate version of.
Oh, a version. Is there a version? Somebody want to
understood.
take that? George, Lawrence?
Well,
I will
Greg, I
accept.
think you're the best person for that question, frankly.
I agree, George.
All right, so I got the short straw. No, not
Still
yet.
more.
Anyway, we're very hopeful, given a few new senators coming on board beginning next a year in January. Up to this point, it has only been introduced in the House 5 times. We've not been successful. We've come pretty close a couple of times, but quite honestly, Leslie, and glad to see you on the call. For people who do not know Leslie, very active in the greater Chicago area, done some great work at lifting up Move to Amend, is a real resource person and a model for being a real sort of Appleseed person, Jane Appleseed, if you will, or Leslie Appleseed, passing and getting the word out. But we're hopeful that we can get it introduced in the Senate beginning in the 118th Congress. Part of the reason I think it's not happened is simply following the lead and the theme of what we've heard this evening: cold, hard cash. The amount of money it takes to run a viable Senate campaign is ungodly huge. And I think, part of it is, maybe we can somebody, there's a new person in Vermont, Peter Welsh. It's still an incredible amount of money, but maybe relatively speaking, because it's smaller, he might be willing to sort of do it and not be cast as an anti, big money person, although we need anti-big money people. So anyway, we are hopeful, and from Illinois, so I don't know if either one of your 2 senators might be prospects, but we've got a couple prospects in mind going into the new year.
And
Lawrence,
Greg,
do you have a direct response?
Yeah, I do. I would just like to add to that. We're hopeful here in California, all the Move to Amend affiliate groups, we're trying to get Senator Padilla to introduce it, because he says that he's all about equity, and his history has shown that to be true. But as of yet, we haven't had a chance to speak to him directly. But whenever he comes to me asking for money for donations, which he's done quite a bit, I always put it back on them and tell them I only contribute to candidates who stand with We the People and support the We the People amendment. So when any candidate at any level of government asks me to donate, I tell them the same thing, and I direct them to movetoamend.org/pledge, and where they can take the pledge that they'll stand with us. And we're in it to win it, but it's a long-term haul to amend the Constitution. So every person that's running for public office at every level of government, if we can get them to pledge now, then once they become a senator, then they're much more likely to help us in our attempt to bring the We the People Amendment to the Senate. So use that technique. It's a lot of fun when people come asking you for money to put it back on them. Pass.
That's so true. Okay, we'll go another comment or question in the chat, and then we'll take a hand.
All right, the next question is from Phyllis Thayer. Can ranked choice voting play a role? And just real quick, also, I want to say, if we don't get to your question, feel free to email us at info@movetoamend.org, and we'll get to it and answer it there.
Thanks so much for that.
So I'll
George?
take that one and y'all can
Go ahead.
fill in if I don't cover all the pieces. Ranked choice voting and other alternative forms of voting are helpful. They do not mitigate or eliminate the power of a lot of money in a campaign. Through ranked choice voting, you choose your top 2 or 3 candidates, and if your first choice doesn't get the votes they need, it goes to your second choice or your third choice if you do that. I think at this point only Cambridge, Massachusetts has that kind of alternative voting system. So it's a helpful tool, but it's not the answer. It has to be combined with other strategies to eliminate or mitigate the power of excessive money in campaigns. Nothing is gonna do the trick until we can limit how much money is spent. As long as there's no barrier or nothing to stop people from pouring money to buy an election, it'll continue.
Isn't ranked choice voting also available in Maine and Alaska, maybe a few other places?
I think so.
Okay, let's take a hand, and I see one, at least on my screen, at the very top left, and that is from Teresa Elamine. Hello, Teresa.
Hi. Well, I've been watching this movement for quite some time, and it's always I always saw it as really limiting corporate money and corporations using money as speech. And what I'm hearing tonight, I'm a little confused because grassroots fundraising is something that I'd like to think that some of the signers onto the resolution are committed to. I see there are 2 signers in North Carolina and 2 signers in Georgia. I know Alma Adams in North Carolina and Hank Johnson in Atlanta. They're members of the Congressional Black Caucus, and Nikema Williams also. And it seems to me there should be a clear strategy on getting more folks beyond the Democratic Party to sign on to this. And the other question I asked in the chat is there any connection between this movement and the Poor People's Campaign? Because this has to be a grassroots mass movement building strategy to help a lot more people understand that elections are being bought by corporations and rich people. And I don't see where the strategy is to get to that. So can somebody help me understand what the work is like to get to that?
Going to ask George, you want to take want to respond to that connecting point between Move to Amend, or the strategy anyway, and the Poor People's Campaign?
Yes. We do not currently have an explicit relationship with the Poor People's Campaign, although many of our affiliates, some of which are on this call now, and some of our national staff work with or active with the Poor People's Campaign. We haven't connected those relationships in the way that are necessary for what you're describing, Teresa. And part of that is our misstep on Move to Amend's part to make those stronger connections to the Poor People's Campaign. In our solidarity work, which the affiliates are required in many ways to do as being affiliate of Move to Amend. I see you, Mary Sue, shaking your head. You are encouraged to make those connections at the local level as part of your solidarity organizing. And the Poor People's Campaign is the best place to make that happen. In some places that's gone fairly well. In other places it hasn't gone as well. So we look to our local affiliates to make those connections. I know for myself here in North Carolina with the Poor People's Campaign, people understand and want to work against corporate power in elections, and to that extent of money in elections. But I think Daniel said this earlier in terms of the Democrats who run for office aren't, and it's not simply a partisan issue, but people will say, unless I take that money, I'm not going to win. And people will often judge the viability of a campaign with, so how much money have they raised? Y'all know you've heard that question when someone says such and such is running for office. How much money do they have? As if how much money you have determines whether or not you win. So Greg, I think you can add to that, but that's what I have to share.
I think that's pretty well said. Lawrence, do you have anything to add?
No, I just agree 100%. That's what I feel that we just need to keep plugging along and doing our best to have a greater supporting of each other. Because what a problem that's been ongoing, I work with the environmental and social justice movements here in the San Francisco East Bay, and most everybody's been complaining that all organizations tend to be siloed. They all sort of work in a vacuum by themselves, and not that we could probably get a lot further, a lot faster if we cooperated with each other in every situation where that made sense. So Move to Amend is actually in the process of looking at that and trying to do a better job. And I think we'll be doing a better job very soon at becoming more of an umbrella organization for many organizations where we can provide each other with mutual aid. Pass.
The only thing I'll add to that is, Teresa, your earlier initial comments pertain to we may be working on something that would inhibit small contributions and candidates who may be trying to raise money in those very small sums. And that's not the case at all, unless, of course, part of the eventual change, if and when the We the People Amendment passes, is that opens the door to full public financing, which if that's the case, then that would mean for people who wish to accept public money, then they would not be able to collect private funds, any amount from any source. The only other thing I wanted to add here is that much of the discussion so far about corporate power and money from well-to-do people has been kind of funneled into the issue of corporate constitutional rights as it pertains to First Amendment free speech. But the truth of the matter is, any one of us, in fact, all of us, could be, if elected tomorrow, if somehow we all became public officials at any level of government. The truth of the matter is, no matter what we believe, however positive it may be in promoting justice in all of its forms and peace and a livable world, given the current rules of the game about what corporations can do, there's only so much that we as elected officials can do. Because if we try to pass at a local level or a state level certain laws that corporate entities would deem as infringing upon their corporate constitutional rights, guess what they would do? They would preempt that. They would go from the local level to the federal, or the state level, or the state to the federal, or they would go to court and say, oh, you trying to regulate what I am doing is a violation of my corporate Fourth Amendment free speech rights, or my Fifth Amendment takings rights, or my 14th Amendment due process and equal protection rights. So those are problems, and those are components. Those are elements of corporate rule that goes way beyond Citizens United and money is speech and Buckley versus Vallejo, that if all those things evaporated tomorrow, those would still be on the books, and those would be the anti-democratic rules that we would need to work on just as hard as we're working at trying to limit or eliminate corporate money and big money in elections.
I want to add, it may not be a response directly to anyone's question, but I want us to all be aware that Move to Amend has performed well in areas that are very conservative and even Republican areas. We've had initiatives passed by local cities or counties in many places where the majority elected officials are Republicans. So it's not simply those of us who are progressive that care about this. There are people out there we can identify who would not see themselves as being, social radicals or progressives, who believe that we need to limit the power of money in governance. Just wanted to add that piece.
Okay. Dolores, any other comments, questions worth lifting up?
Yep,
Did you
quite a
say-
few.
Oh, go ahead.
So from Mike Ferner, is it time to renew the campaign to get local government to endorse the amendment? Maybe even go back to the ones who've passed already with some kind of new wrinkle.
Anybody want to take that?
I think that's an excellent organizing strategy. Some of you may remember that when we launched in the beginning of Move to Amend, there was an overwhelming response in terms of people that supported the work. And we do have to revisit some of those organizations, even some of those individuals, to reconfirm their commitment and get them more involved, especially to increase our numbers, increase the diversity, equity, and inclusion of our local affiliates, and to build that power from the ground up.
True. Jenny, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to add Democracy Days. Maybe if you can explain that, I think that's an excellent way to keep it in the public discourse at the local levels.
Democracy Days are public hearings that are mandated in many of the citizen initiatives that have been passed at a local level, that have created ordinances that call on people from the city of you fill in the blank or the town of blank to call on Congress to pass a constitutional amendment, but also mandates that the city or that political jurisdiction must have annually or biannually a public hearing that is open to everyone to comment and reflect on and testify on the impact of corporate rule and or money in elections on their community. So that might be an interesting twist and additional effort. It might be harder to pass if you're getting a city council to do it. The only places we've done it in Ohio, and there's 10 or 11 communities that have done it in Ohio, have all been done by citizen initiative. But nevertheless, if you're looking for a different wrinkle or twist, that may be one. And heretofore, up to this point, there is over 700 communities that have passed either municipal resolutions or ballot initiatives. Lawrence?
Yeah, Greg, I wanted to comment on the question before the last one, but if anybody else has anything to add to what you're saying, I'll wait a minute.
Okay.
So-
Anything on this?
Mhm.
Go ahead.
So what I heard the last question, I thought I heard them say, are there any other amendments that Move to Amend might consider endorsing or legislation? So I just wanted to say that I'm pretty sure that Move to Amend stands in support of the Equal Rights Amendment. In fact, I saw a wonderful email earlier saying that we should no longer say that we're pushing for the 48th Amendment, because that could very
28th.
well be the 28th Amendment. Yeah, because that could very well be the Equal Rights Amendment, and we could very well be the 29th. And then, of course, we did sort of have a bit of a policy change, whereas in the past, we weren't necessarily coming out in favor of legislation that was less than the We the People Amendment. But now I'm pretty sure I also saw a move to amend emails in support of legislation like HR 1, the For the People Act. Is that correct, Greg? So I just did want to add that part.
We haven't technically come out in support of that, but we are
Okay.
going to be announcing in 2023 a number of statutory reforms that local groups can work on that would rein in corporate entities to the extent of trying to revoke corporate charters at a state level. A few things like that. Now, they would be laws, so they can be undone as quickly as they can be done. But nevertheless, they are different strategy and different tactics.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay, other comments in the chat or other hands?
So this is a more of a internal question, but very valid. Also from Teresa Amin is, how is the money used? Is there a budget for transparency's sake?
We do have a budget. We can make it, I don't think it is on our website anywhere,
It's
but that's,
not.
but that's
But
something
it
that
will
we,
be very soon.
go ahead. Who's that? Alfonso?
Oh, that was me. I actually had replied to Teresa privately, but yes, that is a very great, that's an excellent question. And we're working right now towards having that displayed on the website. It's still in process, but it will be up very soon.
Great, thanks for that.
And the next question is from Sheila Fish. For move to amend work, don't we need more states to support MTA? How can we get the right number with so many red states?
Anybody
We
want to take it?
definitely need more states to support move to amend. And the work is through affiliates, through building relationships with communities and organizations, whether those are civic groups, faith groups, your neighbors, the folks at your workplace, and getting then doing some of those initiatives that Greg mentioned in terms of reining in what corporations are doing. And after a win or two, you know, you've had a victory. You've been able to stop this particular company from polluting the lake or from dumping toxic chemicals in the low-income community. Then you go to the next win and the next win, and you grow your numbers and you grow your influence so that you're building those relationships with the people who are running for a lower office right now. And then, as Lawrence said, once they're in state office or federal office, you still got that relationship and you made them pledge to amend. So they're going to do the right thing. And that is a way to increase the number of states and the number of communities that are supporting move to amend. It's not the only way, but it's a way.
Okay. Next.
The next question is from Kathy Lick. Do you have a list of senators who support this amendment? I thought Liz Warren had supported it. Has it been introduced in the Senate, or will that only happen after it passes in the House?
Yeah, they can go on simultaneously. They can be separate parallel tracks. As previously mentioned, we have not yet been able to garner any main sponsor of the amendments in the Senate. Part of the additional challenge, besides those mentioned before, is that because there's only 100 senators and there's so much to do when they're doing their job, each senator only takes on so many sort of main issues that they deem they want to spend some political capital on. And at least what we've heard, to whatever extent it's legitimate, I think part of it is, part of it just may be an excuse, is that to do this right in the way that you're asking me to do it would require me to have this issue be one of my 4 or 5, which, we responded, well, exactly, it should be. But they said, well, I really don't have the organizational capacity to do the work for that. And so, as a result, we've gotten a number of senators who've said, if somebody else sponsors, we will co-sponsor, but we're not willing to be the main sponsor. So take that for what it's worth. But again, we have some newfound hope because we have some new senators coming in. And again, we think because of the onslaught of money that has been spent in this election, as George mentioned, upwards in the neighborhood of 17 billion in the midterms, maybe these senators are just tired of smiling and dialing for dollar. Well, they're not smiling quite often. I mean, they have to spend an inordinate amount of time raising money, and some of them just don't particularly care for it. So maybe we can play on that as well. Lawrence?
I just wanted to say in the past, we've met with Senator Feinstein's state director, and he said that if we want Senator Feinstein to seriously consider introducing the We the People amendment, that we needed to get more House of Representatives in the state of California on board. So we've been focusing on that in the state of California, and now a majority of all the reps in the state of California are co-sponsors of the We the People amendment, which is pretty amazing. So I think the more we grow this movement, after a while, it becomes impossible to ignore. And one of our top leaders here at Indivisible, I work with Indivisible too, sorry, Move to Amend, believes that after enough time goes by and we get enough reps on board, that we'll be able to flag the We the People reps as anti-corruption, and the ones that haven't supported this movement yet as pro-corruption. And I think that might be a good strategy in the future. Pass.
Yeah, just to say specifically to the question of Elizabeth Warren, she has been approached by Move to Amend supporters in Massachusetts, and she is at this point, at least up to this time, not chosen to be an endorser. Bernie Sanders initially said he would. He never followed through. One or two others expressed an interest. I think Markey, for example, the other senator in Massachusetts, had tentatively expressed an interest as well. What else do we have? Lawrence? Then we'll go back to Lawrence.
So from Bill Mattingly, are there Senate Dems that are opposed?
We're talking about House members, yeah. There's plenty of corporate Dems. I mean, that's the challenge. And we have, pretty much run into when we have lobbied. And Dolores, by the way, is our new legislative director, and she's smiling now. They're smiling now, but when you start running into some of the corporate Dems, yikes. It's a challenge, but that's part of our challenge as well. To indicate in the long term, it's better to be in support of us than against. Lawrence?
Yeah, and part of the problem that I've seen is that sometimes it's just one key person, a staffer within their campaign, that's blocking the We the People amendment. And for an example, we tried for over 4 years to get Eric Swalwell to support the We the People amendment. And as soon as he got rid of his legislative director, got a different one who was definitely blocking us, Eric came on as a co-sponsor. And I think a similar thing has happened with Bernie Sanders. So we have to look really closely when they do have staff changes. That's another huge opportunity to get in there and try to get closer directly to the decision maker, not their staff.
Yeah, Sanders definitely has a gatekeeper. George, I think I heard you wanting to come in.
Oh, am I unmuted? Yes, I am. I just wanted to say that part of, and I've said this before, not recently, but a long time ago, I think of what happens to people who are running for office, and often people we think should be on our side, it's very similar to someone who's addicted to alcohol or drugs. because they feel that I have to have this to survive as a candidate. And even if I want to let it go, I can't because I won't be able to survive. So part of what Dolores, wow, they've really got it. I'm not really envying you now, Dolores, but hopefully when Dolores starts hitting them up, they'll listen to them and they'll be able to realize over time that I'm better served by stopping this addiction and weaning myself. So maybe when Dolores starts talking to some of those elected officials, they'll be able to do a little bit of an intervention with them. Dolores, good luck.
And it's not just Dolores, it's all of us. That's how we've gotten this far so far.
That's
in
right. Not
which
putting
we
it
have
all on
formed-
one person.
That's right. We have formed groups that have gone in, and in some cases, there have been actions outside. And in other cases, we have brought to the table the number of people on our database who have signed our motion to amend that can number in the thousands. In some cases, we bring to that person the number of communities that Mike Ferner suggests we should expand upon that have passed resolutions. And Mike Ferner has certainly done that in Toledo, not just resolution, but ballot initiative. And we bring to them the number of organizations, which now number more than 750 nationwide that may be in their congressional district. So all of those are examples of a little bit of power that is representing people in their district and organizations that they should listen to. Dolores, any other?
Yeah. So first of all, if anyone fails, you can put that on me. But if anyone succeeds, that's all our affiliate work, you know, grassroots work. So I'll take the heat.
Where have I heard that? Where have I heard that except the reverse? Somewhere. Somewhere recently. I don't know. Anyway, go ahead.
I don't know. So from Dan Schaefer, has there been any outreach to large corporations to support MTA?
Large, no, but there's a number of small businesses that collectively, the American Independent Business Alliance, the Businesses for Sustainable something, are networks of small businesses that have endorsed. And, you know, at many of the Democracy Day public hearings that have occurred around the country, or in some cases, when there have been meetings with congressional staffers or congresspersons themselves, among the delegation of people going in have been owners of small businesses to tell their story. So that is a resource, and that is a constituency worth reaching out to. Small businesses, including sometimes chambers of commerces that are not connected to the National Chamber of Commerce. Some of them are, others aren't. And there have been representatives of local chambers of commerces that are independent from the national, that's incredibly pro-corporate, that have had representatives go and meet with their congressperson to promote the We the People amendments. Because they're not getting the perks, they're not getting the low interest loans, the tax breaks, the goodies, and all the rest. Anything else?
Yes. So from Bill Mattingly, to pass a constitutional amendment in the Senate, does it require a simple majority or more?
Want to take that? If the question is asking of how an amendment is passed, people may know from their 12th grade civics class, 2/3 of the House and Senate, and then 3/4 of state legislatures. That's the one way to pass an amendment. The other is to do an end run around Congress altogether and do what's called an Article 5 convention that could be issue specific, amendment specific. It doesn't have to be opening up the whole convention. Now, here up to this point, all the amendments, the 27 so far, have been by the former. Getting Congress to pass 2/3 in the House, 2/3 in the Senate, and then going to the state legislatures. However, it should be said that in some instances, for example, passing the 17th Amendment that required direct election of senators, I believe the poll tax, one or two others, there were states that were saying we need a constitutional issue specific to eliminate the poll tax or to have direct election of senators. And several states called for that convention and passed something at the state level. And it sort of freaked out Congress. So it was an important leverage point to force the Senate and the House to act. But Move to Amend at this point is not calling for an Article 5 convention. We're calling for that conventional route, at least at this point, and particularly under the current political circumstances.
All right, from Bill Davis, has Jayapal committed to resubmitting HJR 48? And he also says, have you spoken with Richard Masters with Business Leaders for Healthcare Transformation?
You want to take the former one, Dolores? Since we just had that meeting today.
Yeah, so we spoke with an aide today, and it seems that they are committed to resubmitting that.
And pretty excited about doing so. Even had sort of a narrative about a group of young people came in to Jayapal's office, and the aide we met with, the aide was talking about different legislation. Remember that, Dolores? And I think Jenny was on that call as well. And the aide we met with said of the various pieces of legislation that Jayapal is behind, the We the People Amendment, that was the one that got this group of young people the most excited.
That's huge. It gets me the most excited too. That's really breaking news for me and really great news. You guys made my day. Because Jayapal's a great lead sponsor. She's the best.
So, yep, there's something in the air. And it's not all toxic. So
That's good news.
Yeah. And I
there's a lot
particularly
of
love
stuff in
that.
the air, but
Was that Jenny's voice I heard?
yeah.
Yes, I was just saying, I particularly love that not only are they doing outreach to young people and meeting with them, but they're also discussing topics such as corporate personhood and money in politics. I love that. And they get it.
Mm-hmm. That's really vital. And it's vital that you bring it up at your, at your local affiliate area or whatever circles you're in, because over time, practices become accepted as normal. And for somebody who's 25 or under, the concept that an election pivots on how much money is raised, and they don't know about Citizens United the way we do. And they could think that this is what it's like. This is what we accept because this is how it is. And we have to absolutely tell them, this is how it is now. It cannot stay this way. It was not always this way. Although, the Vallejo decision is way back. So that's like in the 70s. But I see Mary Sue Miner's hand.
Please, Mary Sue.
There's been some discussion in the chat about bringing more youth in. And I'm wondering, and maybe youth on the call can help answer the question as well, but where do we need to be? What social media outlets, what other avenues? Because at least for me, I don't know where to go exactly to get youth. College campuses is one option. They turn over kind of quickly and they are really busy. So I've not had a lot of luck with that in the past. So I just like some ideas from people. Thanks.
My favorite idea, Mary Sue, and I hope and pray other people have some, is Constitution Day. Constitution Day is September 15th. So you have to have a relationship with your middle school or your high school. And it's so close to the beginning of the school year, you have to have that relationship now so that you can, talk to people, or when summer's winding down, you connect with the history teacher or there aren't civics classes anymore, y'all. So history is the best place to go, or maybe even English. or someone at the school, because every public school by law is supposed to have a Constitution Day something. It's part of the rules. Public schools, they're supposed to do something on Constitution Day. Many don't, because they say it's so close to the school day, we didn't have time to organize. Well, we at Move to Amend have all that you need in our toolkit to have a Constitution Day event, and let those young people know that, you know, the difference between the rights of us human beings, you know, that breathe and walk and talk and all that, as opposed to corporate rule, which started way back, but now is controlling decisions. And it doesn't have to be like that. So it's not seen as, you know, a political talk or presentation or overtly progressive. It's just about what are genuine constitutional rights and who are they for. You could point out the good and the bad, but September 15th, I think, is one opportunity that we should all try to take advantage of if we can. And it's just one thing, I'm sure, and I hope there are more ideas out there.
Hey, Alfonso, you want to weigh in on this?
Yes, I would love to. I was unfortunately multitasking, doing some other stuff on social media, talking of.
Yeah.
So you can repeat me the question, please.
How to involve young people? What are ways, ideas, suggestions, strategies, programs,
And where to find them.
and where to find them?
Well, social media is a great outlet. Right now, the trend has been that on Facebook and Twitter, it has been slowly. Twitter, as you all know, has been recently purchased, and that has been scaring some of the people away. That's where we usually have our younger audience. Facebook, also the demography seems to be shrinking a little. TikTok seems to be the place now that we need to be on. So if anyone wants to sign up for doing TikTok dances, please hit us up. We're going to be exploring that as well. College campuses is a great opportunity, as it was mentioned. I've done a lot of approaches there. Try to speak to people. And yes, as George was mentioning too, trying to get into the curriculum of schools, it's another great option. We have the Movement Education Program, which is a great educational tool. And this is a little insider thing that we've been talking about, perhaps doing some kids books in the future. That would be also something that we're considering, start approaching kids at a younger age when they are, when they start realizing what's good and bad. That would be a great opportunity to do. But we are also open to suggestions. And right now I was taking note of some of the things that were said. But yes, please, all these great ideas are welcome, and we're taking note of every single one of them.
So on the TikTok tip, and I'm not a TikToker, I'm doing good to be able to, walk around, much less dance. But this is a throwback, although I think it's a song that young people would still relate to, but y'all may know it. It's the Beastie Boys. You got to fight for your right party. I think you could do something with that. We got to fight for your right to clean water, to clean air, to whatever. I think that could be a groovy TikTok, but I'm not the one to do it because I'm not that creative. But that is the song, the Beastie Boys.
What else do we have, Dolores? I see something. Somebody said, what about public benefit corporations, and mentioned a few, a good suggestion. We have not reached out. Thanks for that. Appreciate that idea. We'll look into it.
We also had a question about labor unions endorsement or support.
We have got labor union support, at least some. Lawrence, since this is in your wheelhouse,
that's
go
like
for
my
it.
favorite. That's my favorite subject. What I would like everybody to do on a call like this, and I should have actually said that when we had a few more people on the call. I know we've lost a couple. we had over 60 for a while, for everybody to reach out to their unions, because unions will definitely respond to rank and file. So just go to your union meetings and ask them to endorse the We the People Amendment. That's what I did to my Teamsters union, Teamsters Local 70. And the head of my union actually spoke at an Anti-Citizens United rally. And I found out he was really a champion to wanting to overturn Citizens United and realize that the We the People Amendment is the best way to overturn it and the most comprehensive way, because it goes beyond overturning it. It does everything that we need to do to restore our Constitution, actually more than restore, to return it to its rightful owner, which is we the people. And so we have that. And then a few other unions here in the Bay Area, in fact, the postdocs from the University of California are all on strike right now. It's a huge strike that's gaining huge attention. And it's basically all the instructors that are actually teaching the students at the UC system. They're mostly graduate students and postdocs, and they are totally being abused. And so those are smart folks, right? When they looked at Move to Amend, they endorsed Move to Amend, and they brought the request for the Central Labor Council, AFL-CIO, to endorse it. And so we're one of the few Central Labor Councils that's on record. If you go to movetoamend.org/organizations, you'll see the Alameda Labor Council listed there, and Teamsters Local 70 and a few others. I think there's an Alaska Central Labor Council Committee. But the main problem is we don't have enough rank and file yet that are willing to go to their union and ask them. And of course, unions are strapped with all their with all their person power possible to win for their workers. So it's really hard to get them to take their eye off the ball for one moment and work on long-term strategy, which is what the We the People Amendment is. And just a real quick note, we interview all candidates when the unions decide who they're going to endorse for public office. And one of our local representatives is Barbara Lee. And I got to ask her personally at an endorsement interview. I thanked her for being a We the People co-sponsor, but I said specifically, how is that going to help unions and working people? And she said, oh, that's easy. She said that the We the People Amendment will greatly increase the power of the people, and unions run on people power. So there's your talking points right there, directly from a Congressperson Barbara Lee when you talk to your union rep. And let's get more unions on board. Thanks, Greg.
Totally. Fernanda had their hand up. They lowered it, but I don't want to ignore that it was up. And Sheila wrote in the chat that we need to get endorsements from states. And I don't think it's impossible in red states. It does take a good bit of work, but I think it's absolutely possible.
We've got 9 states.
Do that work.
We've got 9 states that have endorsed either by resolution or ballot initiatives, including the radical bastion of Montana. They got it on the ballot a number of years ago and it passed. Yeah, it's possible. If you're interested in exploring that option, whether it's municipal or state, reach out to us. Got a couple more. Maybe
Fernanda,
please
give Fernanda the space.
Go ahead.
Okay, sure. The moment totally passed, but we were talking about youth outreach, and I just wanted to bring up that you shouldn't overlook the youth in your own family. Like, tell your nieces, tell your nephews, teenagers, anybody who's a youth, like, you can tell them about all of these things, and it might be like a really terrifying topic to talk to them about, but it's better than giving them the talk. So this is one talk that you should totally have with your youth. Like, tell them all about corporate rule and the environment.
You can practice next Thursday, everybody. Enjoy.
Good point.
Don't forget that for the holiday break. Just bring up the topic.
Yeah, Lawrence.
And Fernanda, you really said it. You said corporate rule and the environment, they go together, right? So most young people are really concerned about the environment because they want to have one, right? I mean, it's hard to think of your future with a declining environment. And the way that we can protect our environment is to build more power. And the We the People Amendment, like Barbara Lee said, is all about people power. So they go together hand in glove. thank you for bringing that up.
Very true. Let's take a few more questions. We're almost at the 90-minute mark, which is what we had said we were going to go. But if there's any other highlighted important questions or comments that you saw, Dolores, feel free to bring those up.
And actually, I think Jenny's going to take the next section.
Oh, okay. So, Jenny.
Okay, yeah, I know we're getting close to being timed out here, but how well do the leaders here feel the public is aware of the influence of big money in politics? Does Move to Amend need to be doing more education, educating the public further to create more of a grassroots interest pressure? I've also often wanted to print up bumper stickers that would say "For the people, by the people, and of the people," not for the corporations, by the unions, or the special interest groups. It's not exactly a question, but what are your thoughts on?
Alfonso, do you have your hands up to respond to this?
Oh, no, it was on relation to how to approach or how to talk to Republicans or conservative people. And I was just, as we were talking about this, I remember a few years back, really good conversation, very candid conversation that I had with the legal aid of a certain Texas senator. And he was fresh out of law school, and he said that he on principle agreed with the We the People amendment, but it would be a tough sell to bring up to his boss. And he recognized that there would be a lot of people in his district that would support this, but there's also the fact that they are spending most of the time in DC having conversations with big donors rather than actually focusing on what the constituents want. And it's an unfortunate thing that happens. He admitted to that. He was very candid, and it's not a tough sell to people to come to them and explain what the We the People is and how it would help the greater democracy movement. It's just a matter of building that political will, that we have enough people in those red states calling out the representatives and turning out to vote when it's time to vote. And hopefully that slowly, it's going to be creating that political will to pass, to get co-sponsors even on those conservative areas.
In the chat, a number of recommendations of people to reach out to who are in the media, sort of progressive talk show people, Joe Rogan, Tom Hartman. This came up last night, actually, in a different call.
Joe Rogan is progressive?
Well, that was
Shut
mentioned.
Okay.
Chris Hedges last night, it was mentioned, Roger Waters, Russell Brand. These are all individuals who we should try to reach out to. And particularly some of these individuals, the people who reach out to them, listen to them, kind of lean toward the younger side.
And yeah, actually,
Yep.
one of the things that like Russell Brand does is say, hey, put it in the chat. You have something to say, put it in the chat. All of them do that. They offer opportunities for people to let them know what's on their minds. And this would be a great opportunity if your followers or listeners or participants in these, media events to go ahead and say, hey, what do you know about the We the People Amendment, and do you support it? And start putting it on their radar.
Yep. Question, is David Cobb involved with Move to Amend anymore? No, he left a number of years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. So he's in California now.
We also have another question here, if you would like it.
Go ahead.
Why is the focus so partisan? Seems a mistake, in my humble opinion. Conservatives are fed up too, though misguided. So many voted for Trump. MTA needs both parties. Money out of politics appeals to the entire electorate.
Well, it does, no question. And we've been actually more successful at appealing to individuals sort of at a local level than, the higher up or down you go, depending on how you want to look at it, from local public officials to federal, the tougher it is, because they become so partisan. And sometimes we've run into people who individually at a congressional level or even at a state level who have sort of been interested, but then they get told by their party leader, oh no, we don't support that. So that's just sort of the order, that's not part of what we do. That's not part of it. And so it's been real tough. Even much more watered down versions of the amendment that used to have one or two don't have Republicans anymore. It's a challenge at the federal level. I think it's easier at a local level if you can connect corporate rule to issues that people at the local level care about and maybe passed, like trying to, I don't know, get rid of plastic bags or, other local issues that people are concerned about, trying to keep a toxic dump out of the community that has bipartisan support at a local level. But then when you pass an ordinance against it, it gets preempted. And it gets preempted by corporate entities that go either to the state level or go to court. And so that's a good example of where then the local public officials of all political parties get upset about. And so that's why it's important that we just don't focus at a federal level, but local, because your city council people today become your state people tomorrow, and metaphorically become your federal people the day after that. So it's very important to make those connections, to forge relationships as well at a local level today. All right, how about just one or two more? Does that make sense? Or Jenny, are you following chat now? Anything else that?
Yes. Yeah, I am following chat. Let me see here. Are you ready to start calling out Congress people publicly who are not supporting HJR 48?
Dolores, you want to?
I would say that's another local responsibility, because your reps are going to pay attention to you in your district and your state more than they would us from the national. I mean, we could, in some cases, call people out who are really egregious, but accountability starts in your city, your county, your state, your region. So I encourage that. And if you all, let's say you have I know here in North Carolina, our meetings with our senators or reps have been online of late. And let's say you've got one of those meetings, even though when you meet with one of your elected officials, it's a very short time, often less than half an hour. But if you contact our staff, someone from the leadership team, someone from staff can be there as a resource person while you're calling your person on the carpet. But I would encourage you to do that, make that accountability happen locally.
Yeah, there have been, when there have been meetings with public officials and they've not at least initially responded, there have been letters to the editor, there have been public demonstrations outside their offices, and one of which last session, I guess it's still the current session, in Arizona. It was it was like 100 degrees. It was in the middle of the summer, and there were people outside the office of a congressperson, and they finally did come around. So, sometimes, you got to shame them. Sometimes that works, sometimes that can backfire, but it's really important that you sort of get a sense of the strategy.
All right, it's past 9:30. I'm the person who will remind us of the time. Really appreciate all the recommendations people have put out and good ideas. Thanks for sticking with us. It is a long haul, but it's totally worth it. And nobody else is going to do it for us.
All right, thanks for taking us home. So much, George. Thanks to all of you for being a part of this. Feel free at any time to reach out to any of us. Sort of the general email is info@move-to-amend. You can harangue us there, or if you want to do so in person, it's usually our first names @movetoamend.org. So Greg, Dolores, and Jenny, Alfonso, all the rest. feel free to reach out and we will respond. And that includes any help in support in reaching out to your congressperson, your local organization, whoever, wherever, your local municipality. Lots of ways to outreach as well as in reach, that being your niece, nephew, son, daughter, young person in your family, whoever the case may be. So thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Great.
And please
Much
go to
love, everybody.
movetomen.org/donate. Take care.
Sweet.
you.
Much love, y'all.
All right, peace to all people.
Thank you all so much.
All right.
Thank you, guys.